Good morning, everyone. This is BritSimon. So happy Sunday morning to you all. I just wanted to come live here and see if there's anyone around that would like to ask any questions. Happy to take any of your questions. So let me just start right at the beginning because I know it's going to come up about DV 2020 and DV 2021. Again, there's no news. It seems like many months now we've been saying that. And I know people are fed up and exhausted and they want an answer. But we still have to just wait for the appeal court to make their decision. There's no way we can rush them. There's no way we can force them to make a decision faster. So there's no news. And there's nothing we can do to improve that. All right, so that was the main point there. Addis Ababa is the first question I'm going to take. So how is that? It's not great. Let me just check if they've been improving. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show this so that you can see what I do in order to check an embassy. Hang on 1 second. Present, share screen. Entire screen, this one. Yeah. Okay, so you're going to ask me about Addis. Now, I don't want to do this for every embassy, so I'm going to show you what I'm doing. I'm at the site that Zarthesius maintains, and you can go in there and you can have a look at some data for for any given embassy. So let me just change this a little bit. That makes it a bit bigger. Okay, so we can see that they have taken they've taken some 2NL, some interviews for May. They did 72 interviews. They accepted 72 in April, which would be for June interviews, and then they've taken 16 so far for July. Is that going to be all they'll take? I don't know for certainty. It would seem to be a sort of a slowdown. There was a bit of an increase in April. There's a possibility they take a few more. But what is equally telling, or more telling perhaps, is that they've only reached a number around about 20,000, which are cases that would have been in the AV status back in, I think, December. Possibly AV status in early January, but I think more likely the December ones. And so they are months behind. They are months backlogged, and they're not fixing the problem. They're not adding, hundreds of interviews each month, and so it's not going to end well. They are running out of time. They can't fix the problem they've created. Now there isn't enough time for them to fix the problem. There's not enough capacity in the embassy for them to fix the problem. So it means that a lot of people assigned to Addis Ababa are going to miss out. And it's because of a decision that was made at the embassy. Pure and simple, nothing more complicated than that. Somebody at the embassy has decided to deprioritize the cases for DV lottery, perhaps in favor of other visas, but perhaps just, because they chose to not do a lot of capacity. I don't know the reasons, but I can see the effect. Okay, and so it's not going to end well, I'm afraid. So that's Addis. Good luck case I just talked about. Riyadh. Okay, so Riyadh's an unusual one that I'm not always asked for. So let me just check that one. I'm not going to do this for every embassy. So after a while, I'm going to be ignoring these questions. What about this embassy? What about that embassy? But I'll do a couple of these so you can see the method that I'm using. So I look at the number of interviews they're taking on a month-to-month basis. I can see that in April they took one case, and in May they've taken 50. And 50 is the sort of the largest month since January. In fact, it's the largest single month, including the first 3 months, because they took a total of 102 interviews for the first 3 months. So that's a slight increase in the pace, but it doesn't sound like a lot. And actually, if we look at the numbers here, they've taken a couple of cases from Africa region, but not many. And they split their workload between Africa and Asia, as you can see. And so the case numbers are low. and they are taking African cases, so they are obviously backlogged, right? So yes, they're working slow, slight increase this month, but again, not enough to fix the problems they've caused. Okay. Thank you for the help with all the live videos. You're welcome. I think these videos, particularly if I can answer questions fairly quickly, are, they're helpful for lots of people to watch. But I do about an hour on these live sessions, and I know that's a lot of time for people to watch. So I am recognizing that I need to make more non-live videos on specific topics. Please give me your best prediction possible. I predict I'm going to get a cup of coffee in about an hour from now. That's about the only prediction I have for you. I don't predict the DV lottery. So I used to predict the DV lottery years ago. I was actually pretty good at predicting the visa bulletin, etc. But that was in a 100% well operating system. Since the system is completely broken in many places at the moment, and it has been for about 3 or 4 years, it's not possible to make reliable predictions, right? So Africa, for example, let me just explain. Africa has too many selectees, right? But because some embassies are misbehaving, like Riyadh, like Addis, etc., Africa has reached almost current case number. It shouldn't have done that. That shouldn't have happened, right? But it happened because the chances of some people were being unfairly taken away, and chances given, therefore, to people at other embassies that shouldn't have had the chance. So how do you predict that? I'm not in control of that. I can't predict that. I can't predict that mathematically. If I'd have applied a mathematical rule, then Africa wouldn't have gone current, and all the embassies would be behaving and scheduling all the cases that they should be scheduling. But that's not happening. So Africa did go current, and so there's only one case that's not current, and so it went current, and there are still people who will, from low case numbers, who will lose their chance because they're unfortunately allocated to embassies and they can't get out of those embassies. So, it's a completely unfair and unpredictable situation. So I'm not going to try and predict it, right? And I hate the fact that it's unfair. But unfortunately, previous lawsuits have shown us that we can't directly cause action at specific embassies. We can't get a court order from a judge that says to an embassy, you have to do X, Y, Z, you have to do this. The court has ordered the judge has ordered the government to do something, and KCC have done a fantastic job, I have to say. I mean, they've done everything we could have asked from them. And there are some standout embassies like Algeria that are setting records, right, in terms of the numbers of people they're seeing, the number of visas they're issuing. It's incredible what they've done. On the other hand, Accra, Ethiopia, Nairobi, all these embassies are screwing the chances up for people. How can I predict that? So a long-winded way of saying no predictions. Any update for 2020, 2021? I did that right at the beginning, just as usual. Hi, welcome to someone from the Philippines. Okay, let's see. Okay. Hi, Brit. My interview, July 12th. Jerusalem, AS19K. Have all my papers ready and every other documents needed or not needed. Any extra tips? Okay, so get all the documents that you think that you will need based on the list of documents that the embassy publishes. Then get other documents that you think you might need, right? Keep them separate. So have the must-have documents and with copies of the must-have documents. You're supposed to take photocopies of your birth certificate, your marriage certificate, documents that they might want to keep. You want to give them the copy of the original document, not the original, because you want to keep the original. You won't get the documents back, right? So the main documents first with copies, then supporting documents, including I-134 if you can get it, or financial documentation if you can't get an I-134. And then make sure that you've adequately prepared with your educational documents. And if you don't meet the education requirement really clearly, then make sure you've documented your work experience, etc. Make sure you understand the rules about all the police certificates that you're supposed to present. Make sure you've got police certificates for each of the countries which you may have to present them from, right? That's about it. If you get the paperwork right, and assuming you haven't made any mistakes or stupid stuff in the DS260, this is the easiest way to get a green card, by far. It will be a 3 to 5 minute interview for most people. And the interview doesn't have any complicated questions. There's no questions you need to practice a story for or any such nonsense. You just answer questions honestly. If you've been honest and you've done the right thing in preparation, then the interview is an absolute breeze. Okay, so good luck with it. What are the requirements for stepchildren when the step-parent wins the lottery? Of course, we added them on our initial application. Well, you've done the first thing right. So there's no real requirement. So stepchildren are automatically stepchildren, right? So what happens is you marry a partner that has got children from a previous marriage. And purely the marriage document makes you the stepfather or stepmother of the children that you're taking into the relationship, right? Whether they live with you or not. And there's no formal process you have to go through. As far as I know, there's no process you have to go through anywhere in the world. It's simply the basis of the marriage to someone who is a parent to other children, right? So there's nothing you need to prove other than showing the birth certificates for the kids, the marriage certificate for you and their parent, right? That's it. That's what establishes a relationship to the stepchildren. Thank goodness you added them on your initial entry. Some people don't. They think that they don't have to add stepchildren, which is incorrect. Or they think that they didn't have to add the stepchildren because the stepchildren don't live with the person that's getting married, right? So let's say I'm how would this work? Let's say I'm a guy marrying a woman. The woman has stepchildren, but the stepchildren live with the previous dad or the auntie or whatever. They don't, so they're not coming into our relationship. You still had to have listed those kids in the initial entry, and you did, so you're good, But I'm saying that for other people perhaps, but you'll be fine. Stepchildren's not hard. No special procedure. Tameen says, did I lose my chance? My case number is 44,000. I'm from Algeria. Thanks for your help. Right. So I calculated where Algeria is in terms of its number of issued visas and where it will be in terms of the visa interviews that are scheduled. And it's very, very close to hitting the cap, even now, right? I actually don't think they need to increase the visa bulletin number above the current number at all for Algeria. I think they've got enough people that they've either scheduled or are on AP, or a few more that will not have been scheduled yet. So they don't really need to increase it. I'm not saying they won't increase it. I'm just saying they don't need to. So they might do a small increase for Algeria, but I tend to think they won't. And so all you can do is wait and see what happens in the next visa bulletin, which will be in about 2 weeks' time. So good luck. There's really, when this happens, when a cutoff is reached, there's nothing you can do. It's just the way it was supposed to be, right? And the reason it's happening is because Algerians are going for interviews and they're getting like 98% success rates, 97, 98% success. So about 1.5% of Algerian cases so far have been refused, which is unbelievably high. That's higher than Nepal, higher than Cairo, which used to be the good embassy to interview at. I mean, it's unbelievable what they've been doing. It's really incredible. And there's about another 1.5% going into 221G. So an incredible number of people. Now I have accounted for people that have interviewed, Algerians that have interviewed at other locations, and also non-Algerians who've interviewed at Algeria. I've taken that into account in my math. I also weighed up the chances of refusal and the chance of no-show for the remaining cases. And in all cases, the numbers tell me that we're pretty close, probably 200 or 300 available visas before the cap is hit. So it's getting very, very close on Algeria, which is unusual. That will be the first time in years we've seen a country hit a cap. It'd be very unusual. So, it's incredible. It's good for Algeria and Algerians, but it might be bad for you, I'm afraid to me. Talk about change locations in the last months. So location change, when you are stuck at an embassy like Addis or like Riyadh or like Accra or Nairobi, when you're stuck at an embassy, you want to get out of that embassy, right? You don't want to be just waiting forever and knowing that they're going to destroy your chance. You want to get out, but it's not easy. KCC don't want to move you, right? So the only real way is if you have a strong connection to another country, preferably because you've moved there already, and you then work with that embassy, and that embassy is very, very helpful. I mean, this is unusual that they would be this helpful, but they say, yeah, we understand your problem, and we're going to write to KCC on your behalf, and we'll get the case reallocated to us. If the embassy at some other country asks for your case, if they ask for your case, then KCC are likely to switch it for you. But you can't do that based on a lie, right? If you don't actually live there, or if you don't have a very strong connection to that country, you can't just randomly pick a country, because many of those other embassies are saying, okay, show us proof that you've got residency here. Show us proof of what you've said is the story, right? And they will either say that prior to moving your case, or they'll say that at the interview. So you're creating a risk. So rightly or wrongly, KCC are operating as if you're associated to a badly performing embassy, then that's your luck. And they're going to focus on other cases. It might seem incredibly unfair. It is actually incredibly unfair. It's not how it's supposed to work at all. But that's the KCC are just doing the best that they can do to issue as many cases as they can. So that's how it works out. Okay. When will we get our toenails of Nepal? Another thing I can't really predict, right? So I'm getting other questions here, like how good is Lusaka, for example? How good is this embassy? I'm not going to do any more of those examples showing you how to tell whether an embassy is bad or not. I just showed you in the video, so you can have a look at the same things I look at. And I also created a video to explain that in a little bit more detail before, which you can go and watch that video as well. Okay, what's the highest case number for DV 2024 for EU? 65,000 is what I've heard, or maybe 66,000. That seems like an incredibly high number, but I keep telling people, look, the number could be 100,000, but if there's only 10,000 selectees in that first 100,000 cases, then 100,000 is a low number, right? So it's not about the number, it's about the number of selectees, and we don't know the number of selectees yet for EU or for Africa or any region. We don't know any of the selectee numbers. When are we going to know that? We'll know that probably in July, maybe August. So they publish the number of selectees in the visa bulletins, in the visa bulletin that's published in July or August. It could be either one of those, right? So that's when we'll know. And up until then, trying to get yourself worried about, oh, my case number is so high and all this sort of thing, that doesn't make any sense. You don't know how many people are selected. So you don't know on any case number in any region whether your case number is too high to get a chance or not. You also don't know what's going to happen in that region. Even once we know the number of selectees, there isn't a certainty. Look what happened to DV 2023. Africa had too many selectees. There's no way they should have gone current, but they went current because of the misbehavior by a number of embassies. Will that happen again? Will there be similar misbehavior in DV 2024? I don't know, right? So even once we know the number of selectees, you can't rule out any case number. I mean, there's some case numbers you might say, look, they've got less chance, but you can't rule out. You don't know what will happen in the next year, right? Nobody's got a crystal ball. So, but anyway, there you go. What would you say about Ankara 1K? Is there any chance of it coming? Yeah, these questions like, is there any chance of me getting a 2NL? Look, there's always a chance until September 30th. There's a chance for every case, right? Again, we don't know what's going to happen, but but obviously as we get towards the final couple of months here, chances are decreasing and the risk is increasing, right? So just have to wait and see what happens, unfortunately. Does Doha require the affidavit of support during the interview? I don't know specifically, but also understand that the affidavit of support is not always asked for, even at embassies that always ask for it, right? If that makes sense. So in other words, it's a case-by-case basis. So you could have an embassy that doesn't generally ask for the I-134, but they see someone and they think this person could be a problem in terms of public charge, so I'm going to ask for financial documentation like the I-134. So it's always best to have it in your backup papers. If you can get it, right? What is the cutoff number for Algeria? Well, right now it's 40,000, but will it increase? We don't know, right? Mohammed, my interview has been scheduled. If I want to make some changes to my previous resident address, will that be possible? You can do it at the interview, but I would say it's almost not worth doing. I mean, at that point, if you're at the interview, what difference does it make if you put the number wrong on a street address of an address you lived at 10 years ago? There's no point in correcting that even in the interview, frankly. So, don't worry about it. Do you think the Asia Visa Bulletin would rise? That sounds like you want me to make a prediction. I don't think I do predictions. DB 2020, still here, and everyone again. We appreciate the message across the patient. Be patient in the Gomez verdict, essentially, you're saying. That's true, Alice, it's exactly it. Okay, 2024 selectee. During my registration, I've made a typo in the last name of my wife. Yeah, it's easy to do. I mean, she's only your wife, right? Why would you bother getting her name right? Really? My wife's just come back to the house. If she heard me talking like that, I'd be getting a clip around the ear. So what do I have to do in this case? Well, firstly, apologize to your wife. That's the first thing you should do. Buy her some chocolates or flowers or something. Do you need to contact KCC or correct it, or I correct it in the DS260 only? Bingo in the last point. You correct it in the DS260. You don't need to tell KCC that you're doing that. You just correct it in the DS260. That's what you do. Okay. And hurry up and apologize to your wife. You can't even remember her name. Good Lord. Do you think Morocco will send more 2NLs for August and September? They seem to be reaching cap soon as Algeria. They're not quite as highly performing as Algeria, but yeah, they're getting close. And if you look at the visas issued in, let me just look at something here. Morocco. You can't spell Morocco. So yeah, they're doing a great job in terms of the number of cases they're taking each month, but they've got a lower number of issued cases as compared to Algeria at the moment, and a lower number of cases ready, right? But in terms of Africa as a whole, like if you took the numbers from Africa as a whole, there's 11,000 issued. 1,500 of those, a bit more, 1,600 of those are from Morocco, and about 2,500 from Algeria at the moment. Between those two countries in North Africa, we've got well over a third of the visas issued, and will have much more than than those two countries should have got. I mean, it's amazing performance in North Africa there. So. But yeah, not quite as bad not quite as good or bad, depending on how you look at it, as Algeria. It won't reach the cap probably at all, and certainly not as quickly as Algeria. Leonis, been searching DV24 and applied as single. I want to get married 24th of June and include my wife on the DS260. Can I get the visa green card? Yeah, you both can. That's perfectly normal to do that. It's not suspicious to do that. If you've been dating someone and if you're in love and all that stuff, right? And you then win the green card, it's perfectly normal to look at your partner and say, I don't want to leave this country. I don't want to live in America and not be with you. We have to get married, right? Now, it's not the most romantic thing. I get it, but what you should do is rush out and get married and then submit the DS260. The other thing you can do is submit the DS260 as single and then unlock and add your spouse later. But either way, the faster you can do the marriage, the better. So, and whether 24th of June is soon enough or not depends partly on your case number. If you had a very low case number, I would be saying, look, why are you waiting that long to get married? That's a month from now. Go and get married straight away, right? Okay. COVID victim, DV 2020. So sad. Is expedite request to MVC will boost the process of interview appointment in any embassy. If you are processed in current, there is a gap of 5,000 cases. Last case, no. Right. First part of your question first. Can you contact the MVC and say, can you tell all your embassies to hurry up? No, that's not how it works. Firstly, MVC have got nothing to do with DV cases. It's handled by KCC. But also, in previous lawsuits, we've sued the government, and the government has been forced to do certain things that they didn't want to do, as we saw in 2020 and 21, and 22 was a reaction actually of not wanting to be sued again. So we can modify the behavior of the government, but we can't modify behavior of an individual embassy, right? If an individual embassy decides it doesn't want to take any DV lottery cases, like has happened in Nigeria, for example, in Lagos, they haven't taken a single case yet, and they've decided not to, right? And there's another country as well I just looked at the other day. Same thing. They haven't taken a single case yet, even though there are selectees in that other country. They haven't taken a single case. There's no way we can force them to do that. So, unfortunately, that's what it is. And the government, by the way, the government lawyers and KCC's lawyers have said exactly that they are not responsible for telling the embassy what to do. They can give them advice, they can tell them what they should be doing, they can give them an idea of how they could prioritize, but they can't tell the embassy what to do. The embassy sets the number of available interviews each month, and that's it. KCC takes that number as being certain, and if the number is 0, then there are no interviews. I mean, that's just how they're working. Okay. Do we need to, Predrag says, do we need to list all the addresses in the DS260 or only which we registered at the police city? It's difficult for me to answer this 100% accurately because I obviously don't know your country. I don't know procedures in your country. I don't know what it means to say register your address. I don't register my address in the UK or the USA with, local police or whatever. I mean, it's none of their bloody business where I live, right? But if you lived in a country where you have to register your address with the local police, then, that's part of your process. I don't know anything about that. All I would say is in the DS260, I would want to be as accurate as possible and list all the addresses, whether they're registered with the local police or not, doesn't really matter to the US government, right? So you be as honest as possible. What have they got to in Akragana? You can have a look at the data on Zarthisius's website and have a look and keep an eye on it. Okay, I showed earlier in the video how we do that. Montreal, make sure you have all your documents, especially the police certificate from our RCMP. Yep. If you get another police certificate, you will not get your visa due to enormous wait time. Good advice. People need to read the bloody instructions and read them early enough, right? So if you're sitting there waiting for an interview and you think that's going to be in 6 months or a year from now, there's no reason why you can't be reading the instructions now. And for police certificates in particular, you should apply for them early, right? And as is being pointed out here, in Canada, there's a certain type of police certificate that you have to have. Same thing can be said, by the way, for Australia. There's a type 32 and type 30 and all this sort of stuff. The difference being it's not quite so critical in Australia as it is in Canada to get the absolute correct version of the police certificate. And also, I think Montreal or Canada is probably a little bit slower in providing the police certificate. So, but whatever your country, you need to think ahead and read the instructions. Really, there's no excuse to not read the instructions. And that's why quite often people ask me, to give them specific answers where it's clear to me they haven't read the instructions. And in those cases, my response will be 100% of the time, read the instructions, right? You're asking me something I know. I could very easily type it, probably with less words than saying, go and read the instructions. But unless I tell you to read the instructions, I know you're going to miss something else, right? So I tell you to read the instructions to help you go and do what you have to do. This is a very big deal. Getting a green card, being able to live in America, becoming an American citizen later. It's a very big deal. If you're not prepared to read some bloody instructions because you're too lazy to spend an hour reading some instructions, then I don't know how to help you. And I think you probably shouldn't come to America if that really is too much effort for you to put in to get a green card, right? So settle down one night, read the instructions from end to end properly so you know what you should do, okay? And the instructions, by the way, is the link that you're sent by, when you're originally selected, and you can just Google the words "if you are selected," and it will come up with that instructions. But it's also the linked materials from those instructions. So there's an embassy-specific set of instructions, right? There's the reciprocity pages. You have to go and look at those other documents. The reciprocity pages are essential for you to have a look at, and the embassy-specific instructions can be very useful. So, that's what I mean when I say read the instructions. Go and read all of that, right? Islamabad, case current March, but yeah, Afghans are suffering. I know. Islamabad, I don't understand. Like, when the Afghan embassy was closed and another embassy takes that workload, you would assume that they are going to set themselves up for success and staff appropriately to be able to take that workload. And they've had enough time to do that now. Look what happened to Warsaw. Warsaw had, suddenly thrust upon it, same as Frankfurt. They had all this work thrust upon them from Russia/Ukraine because of the conflict there. And screw Putin, by the way, if I haven't mentioned it recently. Screw Putin and anyone that agrees with him. So when that happened, Warsaw had to suddenly sort of, take all this workload. And they were struggling to start with. But here we are a year later, and now they're doing better. They're doing pretty well. They're performing well, right? So that's what I expect from Islamabad too. And Islamabad have had enough time to get themselves sorted out. I don't understand why they think they can just, ignore that and take people who are, in a difficult position and then destroy their dreams. I mean, it's sickening. It really is sickening. How long would it take to clear the form DS5535, and what are checking, and what are they checking if you had presented clearance letters from the countries you had lived? Okay, so for people that don't know, the DS5535 is a set of questions. It's a questionnaire that you can be given. The questions are quite similar to those on the DS260. It includes a full address history, work history, tries to establish some better idea of your relationships with people, family, and that sort of thing. Social media history. Now, you can reduce the chance of getting a DS5535 by properly filling out the DS-260. If you filled out the DS-260, most of this history should already be answered. But nevertheless, in some cases, they still give a 5535 anyway. And what they do is they do a more complete background check based on that form. It can take between 2 weeks and about 4 months, in my observed experience, for people to have those forms processed, right? It can take months. Depends where you come from, depends on what's on the form, depends on all sorts of factors. And, if they can turn them around in a couple of weeks, to me, that means they look at your DS-5535 at the embassy and they say, that's the same as what we had in the DS-260. I'm not worried about any of that, right? So I'm not going to ask for further background checking on this. And they look at the next person's 5535 and they say, hang on a minute, this DS-260 doesn't have any of that information that's now on the 5535. That means we haven't done a background check on that person. And so I've now got to do it. Now you've incurred delay after interview because you didn't fill out your DS-260 correctly. Okay, so that's why I tell people to be really clear about how they're filling out the DS-260. Okay, does the I-134 need to be notarized? It says right on the instructions it doesn't need to be notarized. Right on the instructions of the form. There you go. Read the instructions, please. Greetings. Can I select to get 2NL beyond the last visa bulletin of the fiscal year, like in September? It did happen in DV 2022. So for others that don't really understand the question here, 2NLs are sent generally 6 or 7 weeks before the interview. So the interviews that are arranged for September should be getting 2NLs in July, late July, perhaps even the first week of August. And in DV 2022, because they were trying so hard, that actually continued until we were seeing 2NLs come out quite late in even September for September interviews. Totally extraordinary. And the sign of a very well-intentioned effort by the government. Will it happen again this year? Probably not. Why not? Because, well, we only need about 4,000 more 2NLs to fill the quota, the global quota, right? And they can do all of that work in August. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of interviews for September. And I certainly don't see any real reason why there would be any large numbers of 2NLs being sent out very late in September. That doesn't really make sense to me. They're going to be well ahead of the game. Now, it could, I'm not saying it's impossible, it can happen, but I wouldn't bank on it if I were you. So, we should be looking for the majority of 2NLs that we're going to see will come out in the next 6 weeks. All right, that's basically it. That's how long we got left. Time is flying. I have a cousin. She won the 2024 SA2X. Wow. She's Cuban, but she's in Mexico at the moment, not legal. What are the chances to go for an interview in Mexico? Well, I don't know. I don't know whether the Mexican embassy or the US embassy in Mexico will insist on seeing residency papers. I suspect not, but I'm not 100% sure. I couldn't be certain. So, travel's not easy, I guess, in Mexico. I can't imagine what scenario she's in, your cousin, but she may have to travel to some other country. Obviously not home, but some other country perhaps. Now she's Cuban. I'm not sure what's happening with Cubans at the border at the moment. So whether she could enter America and do a adjustment of status, I'm not sure. But don't do that until you're absolutely certain that can be done, right? You can only adjust status in the USA from a legal status, right? So you can't enter illegally into the USA and then try and adjust status in the USA. That's not going to work. You have to have a legal status, right? So that would mean asylum, essentially, if you get across the border. And at the moment, they're not cooperating on asylum except for a small group of countries. All right, I can't remember off the top of my head how they're handling Cuba, but look into that, and if necessary, contact a lawyer to discuss that and make a decent plan. Okay. Good luck, Doris. Please give me your best prediction possible, says Prem. I'm sure by now everybody should be able to answer this one. What's my prediction going to be? My prediction is I still am not going to be doing predictions. When does the quota of the visa shuffle to accommodate other regions from AF to EU or AS, for example? I think that could happen any time from now. There is a part of the quota distribution. Some people think the quota doesn't actually even exist. It's so funny to me. So there's a part of the RNA that describes how the visas are supposed to be allocated to each of the regions, and that allocation is clearly about post selection issuance of visas. That's what the allocation point is. It's clearly about that. If you read the bloody thing and you're over 10 years old, you can figure that out. So I don't know why some people struggle with that part of the RNA. They also, those people that believe there is no quota, they will, in the next breath, they will tell you, oh yeah, except for the 7% cap. So they know the 7% cap on countries exist, but they don't believe the quota. But then the 7% cap is there for DV lottery because it's one of the clauses in the allocation of visas terminology, the wording for that they say doesn't exist. So how does the 7% cap exist if it's not about the allocation? It's the wording for the 7% cap says something like, no country can get more than 7% as no country as allocated in the previous paragraphs or in the paragraphs referring to the allocation of visas law, right? So I mean, it's stupid beyond belief that we would say there is no quota. Now back to your question, there is another part of that same piece of law that says here's the allocation between all the regions, here's how many Africa should get, here's how many Asia should get, here's how many EU should get, and we've done that math. We understand what those quotas mean. However, there is an ability to redistribute, as you're referring to, Ahmed. And they can take unused visas from one region and distribute them to other regions. And there could be two regions that are underperforming, and therefore redistribution could become quite complex. So although there is a quota, it doesn't normally affect us, apart from in very normal years where every region is processing fast, and then all of a sudden we get a region that sort of stops processing or stops getting 2NLs because they've reached their quota, and it's clear that the other regions are going to reach their own quota, right? In this year, we have a situation where Africa is going to not reach its quota, right? And so there are going to be spare visas, probably 5,000 or 6,000 visas from Africa that will be redistributed to other regions. And basically that will start happening now if it hasn't already started. That will happen, right? And that's why we'll see Asia go above probably 8,500 visas issued. It's why we'll see Oceania and South America getting more issued than they should get, right? So it will happen. But exactly how it happens behind the scenes, we don't know the specifics of that or when that happens. We just know it must be happening about now. In order to benefit from that, they have to make that decision and operate on that decision in the next 6 weeks, right? So, they have to actually redistribute the cases. So we'll see. Okay, a couple more questions here. Let's see if we can do a few more here. I have a travel document with a number and an expiry and issuance date. I put it passport. Is that a problem? I don't really understand the question. You've got a travel document and you said it was a passport. I don't really understand. I don't want to guess your question here. So try and make your question a little bit more clear, right? Do you think there'll be a cutoff for Algeria before 46 CN? Stats say there's no more than 100. It doesn't say there's no more than 150 visas left. You're misunderstanding that a little bit, but yes, I don't see why it would go to 46K. I mean, it doesn't make sense that they would increase it to that many for Algeria. So we'll have to see. Okay, you're in UAE 51K. You're Moroccan, signed to Abu Dhabi, been current since April 13th. Are you? Is Morocco not? Let's see. Is there a bulletin? Don't pay enough attention to these. Oh yeah, 55,000. Yeah, okay. So you're current, fine, but you're in Abu Dhabi, and Abu Dhabi are not working well, and so yeah, it's not going to work out well for you because you're in the wrong embassy. Frankly, if you were in Morocco, you'd probably be interviewed by now, or you'd be getting your 2NL by now. Contact the Moroccan embassy, see if they'll take your case, and get your ass back there. Why you're still sitting in UAE? I don't know. Anyway, that's going to be your only chance. You're not going to get your visa unless you go to an embassy that will take you, and will ask KCC to reallocate. Okay. You're welcome. I'm happy to answer the questions. People, by the way, just want to remind people, I benefited from the DV lottery. That's why I do this. I don't charge any fees. I'm doing this as a hobby. I've been doing this since 2013. 10 years. And it's because I got my my green card that way through the DV lottery. My wife was the winner. Okay. Well, fill up DS260. We've made mistakes on primary phone and work experience. Will it affect if we are not the case? AS21000. Sydney, Australia interview location. Okay. No, it won't affect you. So unlock. Go ahead and unlock. Now, we don't know how many selectees we got. That's one thing I would say. But even last year when we had 119,000 selectees, I was saying for several months, when everybody was running around and certain lawyers were running around panicking people about unlocking, I was running around saying all the processing for DS260s would be finished around about February, right? And it should have been January, and it turned out being February because there were so many selectees. So if we see a high number of selectees, it will determine when we can predict the DS260 processing will be completed. So with 100,000 selectees, I would expect them to complete the DS260 processing by about January or by about December or early January. With 120,000, as we saw last year, then that could drift into February and perhaps even into March, right? But still, every case number, every case got its DS260 processed in DV23. And so, even on that basis, unlocking isn't a problem. However, we also know that people get their case processed based on their first submission of the DS260, not the unlocking. So this bullshit that has come out, and I really mean bullshit, it's just complete misunderstood, stupid bullshit that was spread around. The unlocking means that you go to the back of some queue. Complete and utter bullshit from two lawyers that I can think of. And that just didn't happen, right? That whole thing of there being some random queue that you go to the back of the end of that queue and that you have to wait, for your case. That's not true. It's just not true. And there's no evidence about that. And the one statement they point to from the government, they've misinterpreted the statement. They've misunderstood the bloody statement anyway. But it's not true. Same as other things that Miles Morgan said were not true. So, anyway, believe who you want to believe, but unlocking is not a problem. So, it's far better to unlock and have an accurate DS260 and not have delays and not have refusals than to bugger about believing some idiot's advice to not unlock and really screw your case up. There's far more danger by not unlocking where you need to unlock. Now, I'm not suggesting that everybody needs to unlock for every silly bloody thing they've done on the DS260. If your case was 123 Anytown Street, and that was your address from 15 years ago, and you put 124 Anytown Street, don't unlock for that. That's a trivial thing. That's not important, right? But if your name is wrong in the DS260, if identifying information is wrong, or information that qualifies you for the green card, then yeah, go and unlock, fix that, right? Okay. I know my year of birth, but do not know the day and month, so how can I get it? I have been searching for the year 24. Means I forgot the day and month that I applied on. Okay. The day and month that you applied on is not your date of birth, right? So you know your year of birth, but you don't know your day and month of birth. Okay. I mean, okay. I don't know why you can't remember your birthday. If you can't remember your birthday, are you sure you're qualified to be able to come to the USA? But let me just sort of read between the lines and see, maybe there's some reason why you don't know the date of birth that was used. I don't like publicizing this too much, but I might as well just come out and say it. There is a way that you can use the ESC page, lost confirmation number, to put in all of your details, and unlike trying in the DS260 page, which will get blocked, which will get locked up, the ESC page doesn't lock, so you can try many, many times, right? So if you do know the year, there's only 365 days in the year. That means you might have to try 365 times in the ESC page to retrieve your lost confirmation number. And you might have your confirmation number. Some people say, I know my confirmation number. That's not what I've lost. I've lost my date of birth. Yes, I know that. But you're using the ESC page and the lost confirmation number functionality to make sure that you've got your date of birth, and it's the correct date of birth, and you've got the correct information, so you can then go into the DS260 without blocking that, right? Because you don't want to try the DS260 multiple times, because you will get blocked out, right? So that's how you do it, right? Karen, I hope that makes sense to you. And as I say, in previous years, I haven't explained that too well, because there's an aspect of fraud that I don't like about what I just said, but people are going to find out the correct information. So I'm worried more about that than causing more fraud, really. What do you think about embassy from Nepal? Is it the best performing embassy from the world? It used to be, and they're doing pretty good. They did a thing, where they were underperforming in 1 year, and then all of a sudden, in 1 month, took 1,000 interviews. It was crazy, but it was crazy good, so not bad. Right now, they're performing. They look like they're doing okay, and they've issued 2,500 visas. Yeah, they're doing good. So, is it the best performing in the world? No, Algeria is right now. And in terms of refusals, let me see, yeah. So Algeria is outperforming Nepal, both in terms of numbers of visas issued and scheduled, and in the small amount of cases that they refuse and the small amount that they put on 221G. So it's outperforming Nepal in all three areas. Okay. I just did that one. Let's see. Just going down, got some repeats. What's a super sticker? Mad 50 super sticker. I don't know what that means, but thank you. I get a super sticker. You get a super sticker. I don't know who gets a super sticker. Don't know what that is. But I think that's some sort of donation, in which case I'll go and take my daughter for a cup of coffee or something. So thank you for that. My interview is 1st of June, and I applied for my daughter, but she won't be going with me anymore. Is it a problem? No, it's not a problem when a derivative doesn't go with you. The one thing I would say is I was contacted by someone the other day, and they said for the reasons of finances, they're not taking the family anymore. And, so just the principal selectee is going to go to the interview and the others won't. just understand that it takes many years to sponsor someone, to bring family members after you have gone through the DV process. It's not a quick thing. You could easily spend 4 or 5 years bringing family members across, like derivative children and spouses, and you'll spend more money and it'll be more complicated. So, so really, if your daughter doesn't want to go because she's an adult and she's really sure she doesn't want to move to America, that's fine. But if it's purely because you're thinking that you'll bring her a few months later, then take her to the DV interview, right? Find a way to afford it if it's a financial situation. Okay. When they say that Morocco have a 4469 selected, so there is no a case number hole on that number. No, so holes are case number holes in between case numbers, right? The 4469 is the number of selectees, including family members, including spouses and children, derivatives of the winner, right? So in 4469, there's probably, let's say, 2,200 cases, roughly. And if the lottery were just Morocco, then those 2,200 cases might have holes in between them that meant the highest case number was, let's say, 10,000, right? And, there's only 2,200 cases with those 4,469 people, but they were spread out between 1 and 10,000. The numbers that are not real cases are the holes. And the holes comes from cases which are disqualified even before the announcements of the winners, right? So that's what holes are, right? But holes are to do with cases, not the people, right? Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Talk about DV lawsuits. Watching from Kenya, talk about DV lawsuits. I think you're talking, Joseph, about DV 2020 and 21. We're still waiting for the appeals. I said that right at the beginning of the video here. We're still waiting for the appeals. There's no change to that, right? How many green cards left to issue? Right now we have about 32,000, 32 or 33,000. I think it's 33,000 globally issued. Yeah, 32,408 as of Friday, plus 388 in AP, which are cases which have been approved and they are being issued. They're just being printed, right? So that's 32,800. That's how many have been issued so far. The global quota is 55,000 less 150, so 54,850 effectively. And some of those 55,000 will go to AOS cases. That's adjustment of status in the States. So that'll be about 1,500. So we should be getting to about 53,500 if they max out all of the quota. I don't think they will actually max out the quota. I think they'll be a bit more cautious this year because of what happened last year. They over-issued. They went over the cap, over the 55,000. And I'm sure somebody got their ass kicked for that because that was a pure mistake. They shouldn't have done that. So if 53,500 is the effective cap, allowing for AOS, and we're on 33,000 right now, there's about 20,000 visas left to issue. There are about 20,000 people scheduled already. And you might say, "Oh my God, it's over then." Well, it's not over because of the 20,000 that are scheduled for interview. Many of them are already no-shows. They were scheduled in previous months and they just didn't turn up for their interview. And some will turn up for their interview, but they'll be refused, right? So we actually will need about another 4,000 interviews, or about another 8,000 people being interviewed, maybe 7,000. In order to hit the cap. So we've got about 3,500 to 4,000 2NLs still to see, and I expect to see the majority of those issued in the 2NLs will be issued in the next 6 weeks. All right, so mainly there'll be August interviews, right? The large majority of those cases. So that's how close we are. So we'll have to see how it goes, but that's basically the answer. That's how DV 2023 is going. Okay. When do I need to get vaccinated against tetanus? Do I need it in order to get the visa? I don't know whether, I assume it's one of the list. But there is a requirement that you go to the medical that you either show the injections and vaccines that you've had up to now, or you get whatever is missing. The physician can administer missing vaccines. Sometimes they'll charge for them, and you might be better off doing those before the interview, or before the medical rather. But nevertheless, you have to have vaccines in order to get your visa, right? It's just the way it is. And in fact, I was explaining to someone the other day that was trying to get out of having the COVID vaccine for their kids. When you register kids in school here, you have to provide all of their vaccine information. And it's just, you're just going to do that. So this whole bullshit that we went through as a world, where some idiots were trying to say that the COVID vaccine was not necessary, or it was implanting a chip so that Bill Gates could track you down, and all this utter bullshit that was said about the COVID vaccine. So that some morons don't want to have the COVID vaccine now. Sorry, but we in America don't want your stupid ass coming to this country and infecting people with a bunch of diseases that we don't want. And so we assume that our government is keeping us safe from idiots outside by insisting that they are vaccinated for all sorts of things, right? And so we don't just ignore that, right? So go and get all the vaccinations that you need. Getting properly vaccinated is a responsible thing to do as a member of society. Don't be an asshole, right? Go and get all of the vaccines you need to get, right? So, and I'm not saying to you, Ivana, that the tetanus jab is like makes you an asshole for not getting it. But whatever you need to get that, right? And don't complain about it. If you want to come to America or stay out the country, I don't care either way. You've got the right to do whatever you want, but you don't have the right to come here and infect us. That's the difference, right? How do I find out where the next DV Open will be? I missed the last one. It'll be in October. It's always in October. There's no big secret. It'll be roughly the first week in October. It will open. It will run until the first week in November. Okay, no big secret. That was for the coffee cup. Yeah, exactly. Where is the coffee cup? During my DV lottery application, there's marital status. I filed single, yet I'm widowed. Please advise me. Oh, bloody hell. What a stupid one. Oh, okay, so the marital status in the entry is extremely important to get right. And normally they're looking for mistakes such as you claim to be single, but you're actually married, meaning that there is a derivative that you didn't include on the application for some reason. And in that case, in that one, I'm telling you, that is always disqualification, right? If you say you're married, but you're actually single, you're not legally married, that can now cause disqualification. It didn't used to disqualify people. I've actually got a very close friend who was in that situation, claimed to be married when actually wasn't married, and is now living in America perfectly happy because it happened before they clarified the rules, right? Now, your situation, by being widowed, there isn't a human person alive that can benefit from your application. So in a sense, they may take the view that being single and being widowed is in effect the same thing. You should have said you were widowed, right? So you did make a mistake, and technically you could be disqualified for that. But I think disqualification is not 100% certain like it would be in the other examples, right? So if you can afford to risk the fees with probably what I think is, I don't know, maybe a 50-50 risk, then go ahead and do that. It's not like a 99% certain chance that you'll be refused, and I'm not 99% certain that you'll be approved either. It is a technical mistake that you made, but there is no one that has been left off of the entry, and therefore I think they may forgive that mistake. Okay. Let's see. I'm current but still didn't receive the 2NL yet. Not expecting an interview until August. I have to travel to multiple countries in July. Do you think I'll have to do any changes in the DS260? No, you don't do that. So assuming you get your 2NL, you don't have to then unlock because you've got very recent travel history. Your 2NL needs to be accurate at the last point you submitted it. And there are certain material changes that you should always unlock for, like getting married, having a baby. Those things are material changes, and you should be updating your form. But adding another country or two to your travel history, that's not material, and no need for you to unlock and correct that. Okay, if you're worried about it, you can just email the embassy when you get your 2NL after you've been scheduled and before the interview and say, just so you know, I've got this extra travel history. But it's not a big deal, so I wouldn't worry about it if I were you. Okay, one more question. Let me see if I can find a good one here. I'm just scrolling through a bunch of questions here. I'm having to ignore a bunch of questions, I'm afraid. I think I've covered this one actually for Algiers. With a big case number like that, no, I don't think you're going to have a chance. The Algeria is going to max out the numbers. There's a 7% cap that is going to be applied to Algeria, and so at some point they'll stop. And I'm more or less certain that has to be in front of 54,000. It has to be before 54,000. So I don't think you're going to get a chance this one. I'm trying to find one Nepal. I haven't answered many Nepal questions. Nepal case update was up to 19,400 in May VB, but 2NL was not sent. Do you think there will be a backlog, or will it still sent? Okay, let's see. This is Nepal. They have sent 50 2NLs on the 19th of May. So they did send 2NLs this month, right? It's just that you didn't receive yours. So will you receive yours next month? I don't know. I can't be 100% sure, but I hope so. Fingers crossed for you. All right. And don't forget, with Nepal, they can easily do hundreds of interviews in 1 month. They've got plenty of capacity. So I expect them to actually finish their work before the end of the year. So, we'll have to see how that works. All right, everybody. I'll call that one a day. Thanks for joining me today. Please do subscribe. Give me a thumbs up if you like this particular video. Also, if I didn't get to your question, please go and ask it on BritSimonSays.com, and I'll answer it there for sure. Okay? All right, everybody. Thanks very much for your time today. Bye-bye now.